Welcome back to part 3 of the mini layout build. Also wanted to mention, guys, I'm looking for a name for the layout too. So I was going to come up with my own name, but I thought maybe put it out there and see if there's any suggestions for a name for the layout. And if I get enough suggestions, I guess I'll put them all into a hat and pick one at the end of the project. So we'll see what it ends up being. So if you've got a suggestion for a name for this little layout, please just make a comment and put that down. And as I say, if I get enough of them, I'll put them in a hat and draw them out at the end of the build. What I'm concentrating on doing now is I'm going to quickly zip up a platform which will be the bridge. All right, so I've cut the deck out of MDF, just 3mm MDF. Incidentally, just for interest sake, the same 3mm MDF I used for the streets, Grafton Heath, under the paper detailing there. Probably a little bit high for gutters, but I just wanted to have that real clear definition without sort of using cardboard that may curl up. So I had a fair bit of that left over, so I've cut the deck out. Now I'm going to mark where the deck goes, and I'm going to try and carefully cut out the foam to accommodate for the deck placement. Right, I've marked that out, and now I have to cut out 3mm down roughly into the foam to make a deck, or a landing rather, for my bridge deck. This is the bit I must admit I'm most worried about, because if I mess this part of it up, there's not a lot of neat, clever patching I can do to fix it up. But I won't worry about it too much. The more I talk about it, the more I worry about it. So I'm going to cut it and I'm going to see how we go. Wish me luck. Alright, after a lot of hacking and sawing and chipping of plaster and things like that, I finally made a little landing which fits my deck really quite nicely. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to get my forms ready for the bridge. So and what I've done is I've cut into the plastic card some holes, tunnels for the water. Can't think of what they're called, but you know what I'm talking about. And I'm sort of loosely basing my design on this following picture. So it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be along those lines. So I'm going to have a fiddle around with that and play around with a little bit of design, and I'm going to come back in a second and see how I go. Okay guys, before I do that, I'm just going to share just a little quick thing of what I'm doing here. You see on those bridges, and you see on the photo that they have a keystone design edging around the tunnel. What I'm going to do is, I don't have any pre-formed red clinker brick edging, and most times they're made out of what looks like concrete or bluestone or something like that. But I'm going to use these Metcalfe self-adhesive stone paving slabs, and seems to be always a use for Metcalfe products. I absolutely love them. So I'm going to try and do that. I'm going to whittle away at that and see if I can come up with some sort of design and see how we go. And that's the story so far. Just simply using again the scissors, the Metcalfe paving slabs, and just cutting them at certain angles. So none of them have to be exactly right, because the reality is in the real world, in real life, none of them are actually uniform. They were all hand carved and later on, of course, done by other means. But so none of them were exactly the same. But I think that will probably look quite smart once I have some pillars and things up on the bridge as well. And this is what I've come up with so far, guys. So I've just put the brick pillar up here, and the finishing off details. I don't know what that part's called technically, but we'll say the stripping across there. So now when you look inside, you can see that obviously it's only just 2 fascias. So when I actually finish the bridge, I'm going to put in a little sort of tunnel section there, because bearing in mind this is going to be, or could potentially be, a shelf layout, so people could be seeing at eye level that detail. And here's my other tunnel mouth over here. So all in all, I think it looks fairly respectable once heavily detailed, heavily weathered rather, and we add some foliage and detail and things like that, and also possibly some capping along both tops. I think that will look fairly good. Now, this is the first scratch built bridge I've ever made, so if I can do it fairly quickly, anyone can do it, trust me. Plasticard brick sheeting, Metcalfe paving stones, cut to random size, and the stripping, absolutely perfect. And I'll show you what I used on the Metcalfe paving slabs. You see they've got the curb stripping there. Just use that. It's already cut to the perfect width, and you just basically match up the bits that you need to put over the pillars, cut those separately, glue everything down with white glue. It is self-adhesive, but I do still glue it down with white glue. So, alright guys, I'm actually just inside for this next little part, and what I want to do is I want to just try and do a little bit of weathering on the bricks and on the tunnel mouth there. And what I'm using is just simple acrylic paint, just some green paint and some white paint, and I'm mixing that together to get sort of like a dark mossy colour. But I've also got just the standard white paint there as well, because with the cotton buds that I'm using here, what we do is we get a little bit on the end of the cotton bud, put the paint on, and then with the other end proceed to rub it in so that it rubs right into basically the mortar of the bricks, and highlights them, as you will see that I've done on this one here. See how it highlights the mortar of the bricks there. Then with the green, I'm going to do some more of the green, so I'll do a little bit of that and show you how that comes up. And there we go. I didn't want to go too overboard with it. It obviously looks quite very well weathered. Excuse me, just here, but in real life it actually looks a little bit more dulled down. Done both sides there. You can see where I've done the moss detailing. I've put the mortar in the bricks, but I've also got along afterwards with this Tamiya Weathering Master white, or snow as they call it, and I've gone along and just put on some streaks on the bricks, just to show sort of line washing down the bricks over time. I've also gone over with a bit of their brown over the stones here, and then over with a brush of white powder as well. And I've also put the moss up on some of the stones as well. Just wanted to dull that grey down a little bit, and I've done the same thing on here. I also weathered up, now the light's going to be very bad here, I apologise. I've also weathered up the inside, because as you can see, I don't know whether I've shown you that, that's the inside of the tunnel. So I've just put some brick on the roof roughly, and some brick on the sides, just so that when we have a look at it from eye level, you can see brick on either side, and that has the same treatment of weathering with the white mortar and the green for the moss. So I'm going to place that back on the layout now and see how it looks. All right, I'm back out at the layout now. So I've put in the bridge piece. As you can see, it just comes straight out. We saw that before. I've just got these little cut-offs of plasticard there, just to raise it up when I was setting the fronts, the tunnel mouths. But that'll all be held to that level with the liquid nails. So got that, there we go, now that's sitting properly. Alright, so we've got that end, and we've got that end, so I think it looks rather okay. I'm going to put the track down. My goal for now is to try and start some painting and possibly some scenery. Guys, what I'm doing, similar to what I did with the rock face on Grafton Heath at the coastal scene there, is I just put basically apply a blob of the plaster onto the back of the rock, stick it on. That plaster squashes out over the sides, and then what I do is I get an old paintbrush, and I actually paint in the plaster to blend in around the hill I'll do the same there and the same over there. I'll show you what it looks like once done. So to give you an idea, that took me about 3-4 minutes. But you can see how the plaster beautifully blends in those rock faces. Still wet at the moment, obviously, but again, you know, do work quick with it. The plaster does go off very quickly, but just blends them in really nicely. I'm just using an acrylic paint. It's just a sample pot of acrylic paint, just for a brown earthy colour, and I'm just applying it to the baseboard, and being careful to keep the rocks bare, as you can see, because I'm going to be leopard spotting those, painting them using the leopard spotting technique. I've put in some grout, or some mortar rather, into that brick wall, and I've done the banks, which will be underwater, of the river, brown, and I'll be doing the inside sort of a greeny colour. It's going to be sort of quite a stagnant type of environment in there. Added some wires to the track, 4 lots of wires. It's probably overkill, but I just wanted to make sure that if someone was operating DCSC, there'd be plenty of power going through for the commands coming out of the system. And once I've got that in place, I'll actually weather it, and then I can begin ballasting. What I've done here, which is silly, I've put the power wires exactly over where the bridge is going to be, so I don't actually want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring them down a bit here. Alright, so the story so far, I've painted the second coat of earth brown onto the baseboard. I've been careful around the brick there. You'll see there's still some yellow foam showing around the corners. That doesn't matter. I'm going to have foliage back there, so that's going to be covered anyway. And I've also painted the base of the water, which I've actually done as a forest green, because I wanted to look really murky and mossy and filled with algae, stagnant sort of thing. And what I've done is I've painted it first, and then when it started drying, I got the side of the brush and sort of, what would you say, almost stippled it, but with the side of the brush going along right the way along, so it gives it some texture. Next step is to actually paint up those rocks before I put down ground foam. Also, I've got the track still sitting over there, and I've rewired that part of the track there I was talking about before. So I'll be putting that down as well, and having that, or getting that all ready for the adding of ballast. All right, so I've put my track down in place again, and I've put the wires, the power wires through the baseboard. So I've got one set there, and one set just here, and one set there. So that's where the track's going to be now. Now it's interesting with this foam section, this is something that you can't do with a solid baseboard, is where I actually drilled in for the wires was a little bit wrong. So I forced the track along a little bit, the whole track along, and it just broke its way, or what would you say, eased its way through the foam to find its next position. So it's just easy to fix up a bit of a mistake. I'll have a fiddle around with that again too. That's going to be filled by, you know, covered with scenery and things like that. So I've put a couple of little paved pathways down the edge of the bridge. Not necessarily for pedestrians, but probably more so for track crew. I might even have some track crew on here, I'm not sure yet. And I've still got the rocks bare there. They're going to be one of the next things I'm going to do. And but before I do that, I really want to test this track and see if it works.